Welcome back. You're watching SA Tonight only on eNCA DSTV channel 403. Now, the Uganda-SA Trade and Investment Summit concluded today, and the summit discussed increased bilateral trade between the two nations. Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development Minister Thoko Didiza led the South African delegation. Several business leaders were also in attendance. Minister Didiza joins us now from Uganda. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Just give us a sense of how it panned out in Kampala, particularly with the delegation representing the South African interests and the bilateral relations to increase trade between the nations.
Thank you very much to you. Just to indicate that this second summit follows a commitment that was made by business people as well as government at the heads of state level, that following the first bilateral engagement between businesses in South Africa and Uganda, there will be a follow-up summit which will be held here in Kampala. First and foremost, to actually explore opportunities for trade and investment that are there, resolving some of the challenges experienced by South African companies in Kampala, at the same time looking at opportunities for trade between the two countries as well as investment. So on that score, one can say between February and now, a lot of work has been done. As I speak, during the week of 31st of August, the Director General of Home Affairs was here, among other things, to work out a roadmap on issues that were raised by business people in respect of the visa regime. Secondly, one of the things that have been happening is that some of the companies from South Africa had already been coming here to look at opportunities for import as well as export and investment. One of the companies that is involved in the energy sector, for instance, in building transformers, is close to clinching a deal with the Ugandan companies. So from where one sits, this was really a successful mission in terms of what the summit wanted to achieve during this period.
Yes, and you did highlight that this is a follow-up, a sequel to the summit itself between the two countries. But the issue of the removal of non-tariff barriers to trade between the two countries, including what you call the travel visa regime or restrictions, how far has those discussions been in terms of implementation or reforming some of these policies?
As I indicated earlier, that with respect to the visa regime, the Director General of Home Affairs was here last week to engage with his counterpart as well as business people from Uganda to understand what are the challenges with respect to the visa regime. After that meeting, there was an agreement on a roadmap on how that matter is being addressed. And from where we sit, that matter will actually ensure that there are no hiccups from businesses from Uganda in particular who would want to trade and have trade bilateral relations with South Africa. Secondly, the revenue services of Uganda and South Africa have committed to work on the issues that relate to customs. Thirdly, the issue of tariffs as well as some other import and export regulation requirements, particularly sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which is plant health and animal health matters. Again, from a government point of view, there is a process that has been agreed by the two countries on how such matters will be resolved.
Okay, and the interests of South African business, of course, would be a priority, especially in the environment that South African companies would find themselves, not only in Uganda, but the rest of the continent. I think the delegation being in Kampala from the South African government gives that sense of predictability, that the environment they're going into is regulated, and there are, guidelines and forms that they need to adhere to.
Precisely as you indicate, the delegation from South Africa comprised the political leadership led by myself, together with Minister Gungubele, Deputy Minister of Trade, Guinea, and Deputy Minister of Tourism, Mr. Fish Mahlalela, as well as the business delegation, which included CEOs as well as board members of some of the private sector companies that are already in Uganda, some of them who have got an interest in entering this space. And what is important is that in meeting with our counterparts at a government level, we also looked at those issues that must ensure predictability in terms of policy, including tax regimes, such that on compliance issues, our companies, as well as Ugandan companies in South Africa, have got certainty on the environment in which they have to operate. There shouldn't be any surprises that might actually impede negatively on the business enterprises.
And let's talk about the tourism aspect. Minister, it is Tourism Month, and as we kick that off, there has always been a focus on exploring, your local locality, be it, a province, but in this case, also promoting inter-African tourism, particularly in this East African country that is also well endowed in wildlife and scenic views, including the snow-capped mountains. So if you were to just quantify that, relationship that we can collaborate on with Uganda and South Africa on the tourism space?
Certainly. As I indicated earlier, that we were here with the Deputy Minister of Tourism precisely because we want to increase tourism between the two countries. If you look both at South Africa and Uganda, there's a lot to offer in terms of our natural environment, as well as some of the historical side and scenic environment, but more importantly, people on both countries. Because through tourism, you could build people-to-people relations. But it's important that the offerings that each of the countries give, through communication, those are shared with the citizens so that they know if they go to Uganda, what is there to see, not only in Uganda, maybe in the neighboring countries, but what is important is also the certainty of travel, which, supports tourism, such as aviation, for instance. The issue of facilities, which is your hotel industry and your A as well as B&Bs, what is there that can make a traveler feel comfortable in an environment where he or she is visiting? So those are the things that we would like also during this month, as we're exploring domestic tourism in South Africa. We also want to make sure that we enthuse South Africans to see other countries in the continent and what they can offer in terms of tourism.
Minister, we really appreciate your time. Thank you indeed. Speaking to us from Uganda in Kampala, that is a Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Minister Thoko Didiza.